Let's get down to earth, shall we? Remember, as we move forward, these writers are not stating these things in theory. They are stating them as God-given fact. Hindsight is a terrible thing because it masks how difficult it is to figure things out while you're doing them. In hindsight, everything is like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But while you're working at it, it is very, very hard. And I'm not talking about biology. I'm talking about the toilet running, changing tires. Remember, as we move forward, these people had ink, paper, and basic hand tools. No electricity, no textbooks to learn from, no sliced bread, no Bible, no internet, no coffee. Coffee wasn't around until the 15th century. So we get down to earth, it's nighttime, and we look up. What do we see? Stars, the moon, blackness. It's still 3,000 years ago, 1000 BC, 2,500 years before coffee. We're hanging around, chewing on rocks, thinking the earth is flat and being held up by a giant. And we're looking at the stars. Being the thinking men that we are, someone says, I bet you there's 1,000 stars up there. Between 1,000 and 6,000 was the number that most scientists insisted on through most of history. In fact, it wasn't until the 17th century when Galileo used his telescope and saw a great number of stars not before seen, not seeable to the naked eye. Around 1500 BC, that's 3,000 years before Galileo gazed at the heavens with his telescope, another writer claiming divine revelation, this time a very familiar name, Moses, wrote this: I will multiply your descendants as the stars of the heaven and as the sand which is on the seashore. Again, a subtle, incredible statement. At a time when stars were thought to be in the thousands, God said no, as the sands on the seashore, obviously implying that the number of stars, like sand, are great and uncountable by man. And this comparison of sand and stars was used many, many times throughout the Bible. Hebrews 11:12 says the stars of the sky are as numerable as the sand on the seashore. Jeremiah says that the stars cannot be numbered, nor the sand by the sea. Sticking with the sky, the Bible makes another incredible foreknowledge claim. Going back to Isaiah 40:22, where we learn that the earth was a circle, we'll actually finish verse 22. It is God who sits above the circle of the earth. God stretches out the heavens like a curtain and spreads them like a tent to dwell in. In 1929, astronomer Edwin Hubble, as in the Hubble telescope, showed us that galaxies were moving away from the earth, and the further away they were, the faster they were moving, thus an expanding universe. Simpler put, our universe is expanding within itself, like a balloon being blown up. This find revolutionized the field of astronomy and prompted Mr. Hubble to say that these observations lead to, among other things, a suspiciously young universe. 1929. It took us 2,600 years to catch up to and agree with God. Let me add that there are 16 other verses that speak of God stretching out the heavens. He has made the earth by His power. He has established the world by His wisdom, and has stretched out the heavens at His discretion. And many more. Moving right along, we have all seen the Weather Channel, right? See that long swooping thing going through North America? That's called the jet stream. See how you can see it here just by the different temperatures in America? Listen to this, written 3,000 years ago by King Solomon. The wind blows to the south and goes around to the north. Just in case we forgot that the world is spherical, the wind goes around the earth. Around and around goes the wind, and on its circuits the wind returns. The Hebrew word for circuits here refers to a course, especially a point A back to a point A course, as opposed to a point A to a point B. Another remarkable claim. especially considering that the jet stream was not found until the 30s, the 1930s. World War II pilots discovered it, and it then became common knowledge throughout the world. The jet stream is in fact a wind that goes around and around the Earth on its own circuit. And oh, how the fun is about to begin. This is one of my favorite parts of the presentation, and I truly have saved the best for last. So you can wake up that person sitting next to you now, let them know it's time. We are done with the sky. We are getting our heads out of the clouds, and we are going to my favorite place on Earth, the beach. I love it. You know, I found some people don't like the beach. I don't get it. I love everything about it. The waves, the sand, the smell. I even like the people. You know who else likes the beach? God loves the beach. He loves it. Walking around on water, parting seas, crazy boat trips, and of all the places in the world, Jesus thinking, I need to choose 12 people to change the world forever. Yep, I'm going to the beach. I'll start there. God loves the beach. So we're at the beach, and there's one thing that we notice. It rains, it pours. We know the rivers flow into the oceans, but the water never rises. It does its everyday tide thing, but it always seems to stay the same average size. This bothered thinking men for years, thousands of years. Theories have been thrown around since the 1st century BC, but it wasn't until the 16th century that we started to take the issue seriously. Of course, we now know that it does not rise because it is part of the process. In short, water, the ocean, evaporates up into clouds. Clouds carry the water over to the land, drop it on land, then it eventually runs back into the ocean through various paths. We call this the hydrological cycle, or the water cycle. 3,000 years ago, 2,500 years before we decided to start our observational science and give this thing a name, our good friend Job wrote this. Behold, God is great, for he draws up drops of water, which distill as rain from the mist, which the clouds drop down and pour abundantly on man. Indeed, can anyone understand the spreading of the clouds, the thunder, from his canopy? This is amazing. God puts the first written explanation for the hydrological cycle right here. The all-knowing Google credits Bernard Palissy with the first accurate theory for the hydrological cycle in the 16th century, 2,500 years after God told us through Job. In the 8th century BC, over 2,000 years before Palissy, Amos wrote this. Who calls for the waters of the sea and pours them out on the face of the earth? The Lord is his name. Remember when King Solomon told us about the jet stream? Here's what he says in the very next verse. All the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. To the place from which the rivers come, there they return again. The very next verse, verse 8, all things are full of labor, all things, and man cannot express it. This is one of my favorite scientific verses. God is pointing to his complex creation that he just told us a little bit about, knowing that we'll never be able to fully express it. He tells us straight. Truly remarkable. This next claim may be the most definitive and anti-skeptical foreknowledge claim in all the Holy Bible. Once again, from our good friend Job, 3,000 years ago. If you haven't noticed, God entrusted Job with some amazing knowledge. Job is an amazing book. Did you know that 97% of Christians have not read through the book of Job? This is something that should be done, an amazing book. Challenge you to read through Job. Moving on. Job, 3,000 years ago. God asked Job, have you entered the springs of the sea, or have you walked in search of the depths? Another subtle, remarkable statement of fact here. And it could not have been known or guessed. There are, in fact, springs at the bottom of the ocean. If I were to ask you where the Noahic floodwater came from, what would you say? Probably rain. Written over 3,000 years ago. The 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, on the 17th day of the month. On that same day all the fountains of the great deep burst open, and the floodgates of the sky were opened. The rain fell on earth for 40 days and 40 nights.